so in my last video in my first time reading Bleach series, I got a first look at the rest of the Espada, and I shared my impressions on them just based on a few panels. But a few of you guys were wishing I'd talked more about where I think they're ranked amongst each other, and my guesses on who has which number, and were hoping that I would give my predictions on that. And I heard you. Frankly, I should have, and you're absolutely right. I was so focused on taking in the appearances of these new characters that their hidden tattoos kinda slipped my mind. Considering we know how the Espada numbering system works, that the top 10 Arrancar's numbers are determined by their power and where Aizen ranks them, it's an important part of the narrative. Kubo wants us to be thinking about their numbers, otherwise he wouldn't have set up this system. And considering how much trouble my boy Grimmjow went through to regain his own number, they're probably worth something, and they're worth talking about. And I should have talked about it last video, but didn't. So let's rectify that, here and now. Here are my guesses on each Espada's numerical rank, and I'm sure we'll see how right or wrong I am in the future. As always, please no spoilers in the comments below. If you want to laugh about my placements, or much less likely, congratulate me on getting them all absolutely right, just be mindful not to spoil anything. Just sit back and enjoy a chill game of numbers. And remember, I don't know most of these characters' names yet, so my placement list I have in front of me literally just describes them. So I think I did a good enough job painting a picture for you, but we'll see. So without further ado, let's go back to the Tea Party table. First, let's check off the ones I should 100% be able to get right. The ones we already definitely know. Yami is number 10, so the lowest ranked among the Espada. That feels right for him, to be honest. He's not the brightest and he isn't the strongest, so 10 makes sense. And we know Grimmjow is number 6. He wasn't for a few chapters, and instead the number was taken by Loopy. But thankfully that didn't last very long. The 6 is back where it belongs. So we know those two, right? And if I'm wrong about those, then this is definitely hopeless, and I'm off to a terrible start. But I'm about 99% sure that I'm right on that. Okay, so let's start the actual guessing. I'm gonna go from 9 and go down until we reach whoever I have at number 1. Wish me luck. I think number 9 is the pink-haired guy with glasses. He just strikes me as someone who probably isn't a great combatant, but maybe uses like intelligence or deception of some kind. That's the vibe I get when I look at his design, someone whose strength might not be very physical, but instead strategic, or maybe has a focus on cunning. It's the glasses, let's be honest, it's really the glasses. He's the Donatello of the group, not the Leo or the Raphael, you know what I mean? He's a thinker, keeping distance, but maybe he'll whip out some taijutsu and I'll look like an idiot. But that's the gamble with guessing based on very, very little information. And just to share my thought process a bit, I'm basing a lot of this on the strength of the Espada that we know and how they fight and how they look. Like, for example, Yami looks like a big strong guy and he fights like a big strong guy. Grimmjow looks like a rabid, excited psycho most of the time and is very scrappy and aggressive as a fighter. Kubo, the genius designer that he is, clearly enjoys making the character's appearance fit with their personality, their fighting style, etc. But I also wouldn't be surprised if the man threw some curveballs at me. Aizen didn't look like main bad guy material until he took off his glasses and swept back his hair, so there could be surprises like that. Anyway, moving on. The number 8 Espada, I'm going to guess is the guy with the tall mask in the back. He just doesn't really strike me as a very physical creature, but again, that doesn't mean he's not dangerous. He just strikes me more as like one of those video game bosses that attacks you with telekinesis and his mind. Like, you know, he just throws things at you psychically across the room. Maybe that tall mask hides like a tall brain, like Mojo Jojo. I'm gonna go for 8 just based on the vibe. A lot of this is, again, just based off very little and vibes. I'm sorry if this man's number 1. I'm sorry to doubt you. Anyway, number 7. I think 7 is the tall man with the metal mohawk and the skull earrings. There's something mysterious about him, and the body language seems... I don't know, he's got this, like, posture that says that he's under control, that he, you know, has strength and he knows how to use it, but I don't know, I just think he has one of the least memorable designs in the group overall, and I feel like if he was more important, Kubo would make his design more memorable. Like, if someone asked me to describe each of the Espada around the table with what little I've seen, he might be the one that I forget. It's all vibes. He strikes me as number 7. And number 6 we know is Grimmjow, and will never ever be loopy again. Number 5, I'm gonna say, is the blonde woman with her mouth covered. The sword on her back is an indication that she's probably more of a physical fighter, a warrior maybe, but that doesn't really mean much potentially to the rankings, because Yami is a warrior, and he's all about fighting, and yet he's at number 10. I personally would like for her to be higher, because I think she's got one of the cooler designs in the room, but if I had to hazard a guess, she's probably more of a mid-tier Espada, so 5, smack in the middle, but I hope she surprises me. Okay, number 4 I'm gonna say is the bored guy that wanted to sleep. I could see his lack of interest going 2 ways. Either he's nonchalant because he's super strong and really highly ranked, so everything makes him disinterested, or maybe his lack of interest holds him back in the rankings in his position of it. I showed in my initial impression that with the little we see of him, I'm getting Shikamaru vibes, and so maybe this guy is super strong and super capable and super smart, but is held back by his attitude and his effort. I don't know. It could just go either way. I'm just gonna play it safe and put him near the middle. I mean, his design's fitting for what little we know of his personality, but he also kind of has one of the least striking designs in the Espada. But maybe that's, intentional. It probably is. Alright, so this is when it gets tough. Number 3, I think I'm going to go with the guy with the high collar and the eye patch. I think of everyone, he has the strangest design. Between the outfit, the eye patch, the kind of weird smile he's got going on, and even just the kind of general gangliness about him, he seems like he's going to be an important character just from a design perspective. It seems like a lot was kind of put into it, because one look at him and he's immediately memorable. I could even see him being higher, honestly, maybe like number 1, but there's something about him that feels like a character that radiates jealousy or like wants more power and status. Like he's kind of like a Jafar kind of character. Someone like that, Peter Baelish Littlefinger, that's the vibe I'm getting from looking at him. He's just he feels like he's a guy who like lurks and skulks in the shadows and waits for an opportunity to try to advance himself. So I could see him being close to the top, but not quite there. Always a little out of reach, like maybe like a Starscream. That's who this guy is. He's Starscream of the Espada. That's my guess. This is a jealous, like conniving guy who just wants to be in charge, but he just doesn't have it. This is Starscream. Alright, the final 2. I went back and forth in my head on this a few times, but I think Ukiura is number 2. I've said before in Q&As that I think he's 1 or 2, and I'm sticking to that. He's practically the face of the Espada, and not in like the loud rival kind of way that Grimmjow is. Ukiura is no nonsense, and always seems to be in control, and he seems like above a lot of characters. At least he thinks he is, and maybe he can back that up. And he also seems very trusted by Aizen, and from what little we've seen him do, he also seems pretty powerful. The only reason I'm not putting him at number 1 is because it almost seems a little too obvious for him to be number 1. I think he'll seem like he is until we realize that there's like one person even stronger than him. Which leaves me with my number 1 pick. The old man with the tiara, crown, diadem headpiece thing. He's my prediction for number 1. And hear me out. I said in my impression video never to underestimate old men in these kinds of stories, and I mean that. Just look at this guy. Not only is he old, but he's covered in battle scars. He's also absolutely ripped, just like Yamamoto, and with how I'm getting the sense that the Espada are like a reflection of the Soul Reaper captains, I could see this man being a shadow of Yamamoto in a way. Just another old guy who maybe like they fought in ancient times, like when they were both young, and this guy was still just a regular hollow, you know what I mean? But like, what does young and old even mean in these terms of the afterlife and these spiritual creatures? Like, is this man actually old? And how does that translate to how many years he's lived? This guy could be old. Whatever the case, he seems strong, probably experienced, probably wise, and a mustache on a tough old guy like this screams authority. But that could just be Führer King Bradley talking. But honestly, this could also be the opposite, and he's at number 9 because he's like out of his prime. We'll see, I can't be sure, but all of this is kind of a shot in the dark, so yeah. As requested, there's my predictions for the Espada's numbered positions. I hope you were either blown away by my accuracy, or at least got a good laugh at my expense. Whatever the case, I'm excited to find out so I can come back and compare them to my predictions. Fingers crossed. I'll see you guys this weekend as we get to talk about a really odd family and the bonds of friendship. Take care.